the shot off. Throw it down.
He runs with the 50. He runs with the 40. The guy is drunk.
Here we go.
Turn it up.
You're listening to the Benchwarmers and Burners podcast with your host, Josh Lozano.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of the Benchwarmers and Burners. Got a special guest. First time ever on the show. Catch him out in Dallas, sipping cocktails with Mark Cuban. His name is Romeo. I'll be dropping all his handles on the bio below. And how are you doing, Romeo?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing great. Great to talk to you. The great Romeo Scagliarini, cross-country legend over in Illinois. Now he's working with all the main computers up in Dallas, but good to have you on the show. One reason that I really wanted to get you on there and kind of get your perspective is for the listeners out there. Romeo actually was lucky enough to go to what might have been the last game of the season. He went to the Dallas Mavericks versus the Denver Nuggets. Dallas won that game 113-97. And even at the time, too, I was texting him because, you know, when you're at the game, you're not really focusing on social media or whatnot. And I was just hitting him up. I was like, hey, do you see what's going on with this Jazz game, this Utah Jazz Oklahoma game? He's like, no, I have no idea. And the game started just getting canceled. And I mean, how was that from your perspective down in the crowd?
So the funniest part of it was we get to the game. We're actually, we got those tickets from a friend of ours. So we were looking at all the like COVID-19 stuff like a couple of days before, thinking, man, I really hope this game doesn't get canceled, because we ended up having like good seats and we just wanted to go watch some basketball, like obviously. So the game doesn't get canceled. We get to the game. I think by the time I got there, my phone was at like 18%, which is funny for the story because I had no idea what was going on because I wasn't checking Twitter or anything to try and not
kill that battery.
Watch the game. Not kill that battery. We had really good seats, so we were watching like Jamal Murray and Gary Harris and all those guys warm up, and we could see like all the difference in like how much taller Boban is than everyone. You know, just all the warm up stuff that's fun to watch. So we're going through that, and you texted me, and one of my other people I talk basketball with texted me. He goes, "Hey, have they started your game yet?" And I was like, "No. What? I mean, is it like, are we going to get canceled? Like, what's going on?" And they just sent me a link to the Jazz like Twitter, or I guess it was Royce Young or whoever it was, the Thunder guy, saying the head medical trainer ran out onto the court and stopped that game. So by that point, our game just tipped off, like right then. And we're thinking, okay, well, we tipped off. Like, we're good to go watching this game. I don't know. 45 minutes later, we start hearing all of the Rudy Gobert has coronavirus. And we start thinking, oh, my God, if he actually has coronavirus, they're not playing any other games today. Like, there's no chance.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy, too, because it was actually halfway through that game that it was like, I believe the second quarter is when they announced it and they just pulled the plug on the season. And then there was like the famous videos like Mark Cuban reading the text messages. It was just crazy. I think it was
towards the end of the second quarter, and the funniest part of it was Cuban gets the news and he stands up, and Cuban, like, he sits right next to the Mavericks bench in every home game. And the friend of mine that gets us tickets, or has before, puts us like near the Mavs bench every time, just because that's where they, like, I guess they put tickets like that.
Yeah, you're VIP, Romeo. I get it. They got to hook you up.
So anyways, we always get to see, like, we can see Cuban, we can see all the Mavs players, we can see Carlisle, we can see all of the people on that side. Like in this game, for example, Kristaps wasn't playing, so we could see him sitting on the end of the bench just messing around. Steph Curry wasn't playing, and I think somebody else wasn't playing too. But anyways, they're all sitting like on the end of the bench, and you can just see them kind of talking it up. And then Cuban walks over to like the group of all the players who aren't playing in the middle of a timeout and just pulls them aside and starts talking to them. And we're just kind of like, what is Cuban talking to like players who aren't currently playing in the game about, like, so casually? He looked super, like, just, I guess, I don't want to say happy, but he didn't look mad. He didn't look disappointed. It was just him, like, kind of talking to all the side players. And then JJ Barea, who played in the game, played a pretty large amount of minutes in the game for like a 17th year player or whatever. He was talking to Cuban too, and then he just looked really shocked, and then he went, oh, and then they just started playing again. But then we finally found out, okay, this game, or they just pulled the plug on the season, so we might be at the last game if they don't play that Kings Pelicans game tonight, because this one, I guess, started last and was going to end last.
Yeah.
But they made no announcements in the stadium. They made they went into halftime, no announcement about anything that could possibly happen. They came out of halftime. The players kind of looked a little disinterested, honestly. We were kind of like, they looked a little groggy, like they'd been on a back-to-back or like a back-to-back-to-back, like you could tell in some of those games. So by that point, they all knew what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is really deflating.
And it was really surreal.
Oh yeah, I bet. I think what's crazy too is you just can't predict that, because that Pelicans-King game, they had to pull the plug on it too. Basically, you were just crazy to think that that was the last game. And then how was it too? You said they weren't making a big deal about it. It makes sense too, because I feel like that's probably the proper way to handle it compared to how they did it at the Jazz game when they made that announcement. They made it sound like it was like a World War III pandemic. People were screaming and whatnot. Did you feel like that was the right move? How do you feel about that at the moment?
I thought it was kind of cool because at that point, probably about midway through the third quarter, Mavs were down a little bit and came on a run, like almost all the way, like they were coming on a run, coming all the way back at that point. And you could tell the crowd was just like into it, like it was a playoff game at that point. And it was really cool because although the stadium was probably, 60% full, just because of like all of the news recently and how many companies have gone work from home, and a lot of people didn't obviously want to go to an NBA game, which is completely understandable. But it seemed like I haven't been to an NBA playoff game yet. I was hoping to go this year, but we'll see about that now. But it just every single person in the crowd was like cheering every bucket and cheering for defense as a time I haven't seen in another regular season NBA game I've gone to.
It was a playoff atmosphere then. It really truly was. I get that too, because you don't know when you're gonna get another game like that. So at the time too, I couldn't fathom how long this quarantine and the lockdown would be, if that makes any sense. I was still like just juggling the idea of playing without fans. In my mind, that was still like a possibility that was like, oh, it'll be fine. We're not going to lose the NBA. We're just, we're going to play without empty arenas. It's just players. And then when they just pulled the plug mid-season as the games were going, I think that's when that was just a real shock to the system. That's when it really started setting in how big it is, not only just in sports, if that makes any sense, but how big this is going to start affecting. Especially too, because I'm in the West Coast, so I live in Las Vegas. We already hearing the rumblings of what's happening in our neighboring state, California. They're having the lockdowns. What's going on with the Chase Center? They were already, the city was already telling the Golden State Warriors, like, don't have any crowds over 1,000 people. How was that? Was there anything like that going on in Texas?
That hadn't started yet at all. It did pick up a little bit right after that. But even now, Texas has not put in the same like measures as some of the other states like California and New York, for example. But that definitely did start to pick up. And I honestly think, like, it's weird to say this, but as soon as something as major as like a sporting event or a professional athlete has something that is like coronavirus, for whatever it may have been, like wasn't like a lot of, I know a lot of my friends that are basketball fans, they were like, oh yeah, we'll play like you said with empty arenas, whatever, because it'll be fine. And then it completely switched the narrative on that one night.
Yeah, it really did, especially too when Rudy got it, because that's when you started understanding how you're like, man, this is it. It's here. It's in the States. I know people were getting it, but because then too, it was like the night before it was announced that Tom Hanks tested positive for it in Australia. I know that's when a lot of people were like, oh shit. But when Rudy got it too, and then what was crazy was I think it allowed people to process it and get a better understanding of how this can spread so rapidly, because then you saw it was like, oh well, they did play the Brooklyn Nets a few nights before, and then no Nets player tested positive. A ref who wasn't even in the arena at the time, one of the refs did test positive, but another ref too. So they were saying, oh, he had even no relations to the game. I don't know how this one got it. And then you started connecting the puzzles. You're like, all right, well, 2 Lakers players tested positive and they played the Nets a few nights before. It was just a trickle down effect. I'm kind of I hate that this had to happen to the NBA, but if there was any league that this would happen mid-season to, this also happened to the NHL, but the NBA, they always managed to handle things right, and I think them pulling the plug like that, it made it easier for the NCAA and March Madness for them to do the difficult decision of canceling it, because then you already kind of have the president of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And speaking on like the NBA's behalf, like whenever Cuban came out that night, it was like really cool to have been like, oh yeah, I was in that arena after, like right before Cuban goes and says, we're going to do all these things for everybody that works for us part-time. And we're going to make sure that although the cancellation of games or postponement or whatever of games is happening, our employees and our workers aren't like over affected by it. They're not going to like lose their jobs, lose pay, things like that. And it was just like really cool because we actually saw that like leaving the stadium, we saw like just a tweet of him getting interviewed, and it was just really cool to like be able to say like, oh yeah, I was like literally 20 feet from that dude 10 minutes ago, and now he's like stepping out in a way that definitely like made news in a positive way and help influence other people to do similar things.
I mean, I'm real glad too that Cuban stepped up, and I mean, it couldn't happen to a better owner because you got guys like James Dolan, notorious bad owner and everything. So, but I mean, Mark Cuban, the thing about it, he's always loved the league. He's always loved the NBA. He's the most fined owner of it. He's very outspoken. I'm glad it happened to him because then he made it hard for other owners not to pay their arena workers. And then he even said it too, and he was just so simple about it. He's like, this is not about money. This is about taking care of everyone and safety. We're going to get a program. That's what he kept saying. We're going to get a program going. He said where they might trade volunteer hours for their pay. I think it was just crazy that to think, Romeo, you were a small part in a huge chapter in not just American history, but world history. Like you attended that, like the pinnacle game, because that was the one that was being broadcasted. So how everyone,
that was the ESPN broadcast.
Mm-hmm, that's how everyone was getting their news too. We were just watching it. Shout out to Cuban though. So
yeah, the funniest part of it was no one's gonna remember Boban's 31-17 game now.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, it's kind of just a throwaway too. But what's crazy is how it just derailed the season, because I felt like momentum in the league was fully shifting. So we can transition now to actually talking about basketball, because I know you're a huge fan of it yourself, extremely knowledgeable. I felt like this was the turning point. There's some people who I feel like they ignorantly use this argument. They're saying, oh, well, isn't this great for older players like LeBron James? They get all this time off. That's not true at all. That's absolute, because now they got to get their bodies acclimated to it. They use this time, the little buffer after All-Star break before the playoffs, to get their body ready. Because there's been players, I forgot what rookie it was. I might have to, I'll reference that later. But there was a rookie who was just like, yeah, one playoff game. My very first playoff game ever, it was crazy. It felt like I played 7 games in a row. And he said just the atmosphere, the pressure. He said the physicality. He's like, I just can't believe we did all that work just to win one game. Now I have to do this another, like how many more times? Like depending how far it goes. Like this is crazy. I can't think of it. Like, players need that extra time. I think it's going to be crazy because we're going to see a lot of sloppy basketball. Players coming out cold board. I'm very interested to see how they're gonna, because I know they're gonna do everything they can, Adam Silver, to not scrap the season. There's just so much money. They're bound to lose, and they were already planning to lose so much money after Daryl Morey
after the beginning of the year stuff.
Mm-hmm, with China. So whether it be they just live stream the event, because they're already losing on so much sponsorships, and they're already having to reference, the doomsday clause in a lot of players' contracts, which, a lot of players didn't even know about, where they have to forego part of their salary if they didn't complete enough games, which is what the league has to do to survive. But if you're looking at a lot of other businesses, this is what they have to do.
Right. And I don't know, they're trying, like, even now, like, they're trying to make up for that with, like, they announced something with, like, playing horse virtually among a bunch of different players today, which that is what it is. But back to like what they were doing, or what like is going on in the league this year, it was just like there were so many storylines that needed to be fleshed out, that needed playoffs for it, and that's what's so sad about it.
Just top of the Battle of LA, I was super invested in that. Like I said, I'm a journalist first, so I tried to be impartial, but obviously I'm a Lakers fan second. That was crazy. LeBron James, too, is turning the corner. There's just so many. Giannis, too. Giannis is starting his own little dynasty in the East. It looks like he's starting to become what LeBron James was for the young Cavs, and he's just dominating the East. And there's just so many storylines, like Luka, too. Incredible. Speaking of Dallas, how well him and Trae Young have been in their second season. And to think that he's going to be able to showcase that at such a young age in the playoffs with Kristaps, plus Kristaps trying to prove himself, too, after there's just so many storylines that is just like poof, that's it.
Yeah, it's like a year that had storylines from literally top to bottom, and most of them, like just a bunch of them, just needed like the playoffs to flesh those storylines out. Philly, for example, are they going to keep Ben Simmons and Embiid and Brett Brown, or are they going to get rid of one and keep the other two? Or what's going to go on with that? I mean, even like the Chris Paul thing in Oklahoma City, it's just a different, like a completely, no one expected them to be the 6th seed or 5 seed, I think, probably right now.
No, everyone was saying that, they're tanking. Remember, I distinctly remember, we're like, this is a throwaway season for Oklahoma. Oh, it's even worse, too, because no one's going to want to trade Chris Paul this season. This would be a perfect season to trade him. Right. Oh, well, I guess you just got to waste this year and then ship him off next year. And no, they're not in rebuild mode. They're in they're a winning mode.
Even a Western Conference, like both Western Conference finalist teams, not currently in the playoffs because of injuries and other things from last year. It's just this year was going to be a whole different like monster when it came to storylines, because like everybody says, a lot of people who don't like watch basketball frequently, or maybe they do, and they just think it's like super predictable. Some years are decently predictable just because of the top talent, but everything else, like 3 through 16 or 3 through 30 even, is super not predictable every year. So this year, I think it was refreshing to more casual fans to say, okay, well, it's 1 through 30 that's not predictable this year rather than 3 through 30, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also too, it is really refreshing because we didn't have because when KD basically was like Anakin Skywalker, he was supposed to bring balance to the NBA, but instead he went to the Warriors. I mean, because when you see Kevin, when Kevin Durant was a young buck on OKC, just how good he was so young, because he was averaging 20 points as a rookie. Which is crazy.
Yep.
I mean, because we have now you're starting to see it because statistically there's more possessions in game, more people are shooting threes, it's more of an offensive driven league. But for the time that he came in, and when I was watching him challenge Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron on that Miami team, I was like, he's the next one. He's gonna carry the mantle whenever LeBron retires, because that's just how good KD was. And then when he joined that Warriors team, who was already like just so dominant, I just couldn't wrap my head around any team possibly beating him. So, I mean, shout out to him for going to Brooklyn. I'm really excited about that. I'm really interested to see what him and Kyrie are going to do. I really wish that they kept Kenny Atkinson. I really wish that they kept Kenny Atkinson, but they moved on forward. I know you yourself, you're a big Kyrie advocate. So I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts about Kenny's departure from the Nets?
I mean, here's the thing. So Kyrie has been, since his post-LeBron years, has been labeled so many things that are just blasphemous and wrong that I am going to explain real quick. So basically, we can start. We'll start with the Brooklyn and then we'll go backwards. So Brooklyn, they get KD and Kyrie this year, which are two massive superstars, two of probably the most 5 famous NBA players. I'm not saying most talent, like best or whatever. I'm saying most famous. Two of the 5 most famous NBA players. And they're going to go to Brooklyn, whatever. And they know KD's out this year. So Kyrie's going to come in and play with all the pieces we have and see what happens. Well, they also brought in one other new person that is not talked about very often. Their owner is brand new. He bought the team within the year, like the past 12 months, I believe. And he, just like Kyrie and KD, was new to the culture. He was new to everything. And when you are a multi-billionaire owner who just paid billions of dollars for an NBA team, I would assume you would like to change things to fit your style a little bit better. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and for those listening, the owner of the Nets is actually one of the co-founders of Alibaba.
Yeah, yep, one of the co-founders, and he bought the Nets. If it wasn't within the last 12 months, it was within the last 16. And he came in, and they got KD and Kyrie based on all of the previous work that had happened under the previous owner, which Prokhorov was many things, but after the first couple of years, he didn't really meddle at all, and he let everybody do their job from every report.
Yeah.
So
and the Nets have a huge turnaround, so you don't mean to cut you off, but from the way that he ran it, he was, he had a lot of money, and that usually having a lot of money doesn't necessarily translate to being a great team owner, because he pushed for Jason Kidd and he got the trade where he basically traded all their draft assets and all their future equity for a aging Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Joe Johnson, and paired it up with their all-star center at the time, Brook Lopez. And to think about
Darren Williams.
Yeah, and Darren Williams too. Totally spaced out on it. Which, but at the time, Darren Williams, Utah Jazz, people were making the argument, who was the best point guard in the league, Darren Williams or Chris Paul? Now, hindsight, looking at it, you're just like, it's kind of crazy to think about, but that's just how damn good he was. And to think that the Nets turned around that quickly from going all in on that, blowing that up, rebuilding, and now having a team of Kyrie, Dinwiddie, Durant, Jarrett Allen, who I think is phenomenal. I personally think that he should be starting over DeAndre Jordan, but we can get in that later.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. But go on, continue.
No, I agree with that. But DeAndre Jordan's the guy who makes money because he's friends with the top 10 NBA players.
Mm-hmm. Which is crazy to think about because, just a couple of years ago, Mark Cuban was driving all around Dallas freeways trying to find DeAndre Jordan. Blake Griffin put a chair, blocked him off. And then that's how high of a commodity he was. And then now we're sitting here going, man, Jarrett Allen should be starting over him. So it's crazy how quickly things change.
It really is. I also think that's credit to Jarrett Allen. But anyways, I want to go real quick on why Kyrie Irving is not what everybody says he is as a coach killer and a locker room cancer and all of those things. So first, what I was going into with the Kenny Atkinson thing, Joe Tsai unilaterally made the decision to remove Kenny Atkinson. While I guarantee you he probably did ask Kyrie and KD specifically, do you think we should keep Kenny Atkinson or should we fire him? I don't think that they knew him well enough as having only been their coach for, well, KD's coach realistically never, and Kyrie's coach for 3 or 4 months to say, no, we love him, we want to keep him. I don't know if I would argue with my own, like the person in charge of writing my paycheck 3 or 4 months in about someone that I wasn't positive about. And plus, I'd be okay installing someone that fit our system a little bit better with a little bit more superstar like dominance rather than deep ball movement, egalitarian system.
Yeah. I mean,
so
yeah, and then there were players too that even guys who, like, for example, Karis LeVert, who the game before Kenny Atkinson got fired, he had like 40 points because Kenny Atkinson's like, we all eat, like everyone's going to get their chance, we ride the hot hand. And then even guys like Karis LeVert spoke up and being like, I don't know where I am in the pecking order of this. Like, and players didn't like that.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't like, on paper, when you hear that, you're like, that's crazy. But you know, people think that these athletes, all they care about is winning, but they always forget they're humans just like us. They have pride. They have selfish goals and unselfish goals too. And then people like having that hierarchy or pecking order. Like, all right, I'm the go-to option. I'm the number 2 option. And I mean, just that Kenny Atkinson, this isn't the team that he had last year. So it's not like he had guys like D'Lo and all them. This is a totally different team. And I understand that you need a coach to fit the team. I think Kenny Atkinson's going to good coach, though. I think he's going to find a great spot. I'm wondering where he's going to go. But where do you think the Nets go from here? Realistically, how good do you think the Nets are going to be next year?
I think if the Nets have both Kyrie and KD playing, they're a top 3, top 4 Eastern Conference team easily. Even with they have to, like, KD's going to come back slow, whatever. I call BS on that. Kevin Durant and Kyrie, he's going to come back slow or whatever. He's Kyrie Irving. He was averaging 27 this year before he got hurt, like 27, 5, and 6 this year before he got hurt. The dude's a great player. Like, it doesn't matter. Having 2 top, like, okay, if we just go down the best players in the East, Kyrie and KD are both in the top 5. So if you have 2 top 5 players on your team in a conference and you're not top 3, then that's just like organizational negligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree
I think they'll be really good.
I do agree with you on the Kevin Durant. A lot of people thinking he's going to come out slow. I think even when he was playing on one leg in that final series against Toronto, he was still arguably the best player on the court, and he couldn't drive. All he can do is really shoot. And even then, he was like automatic from the 3-point line. I think, yeah, he is going to come out slow. I just think that Kevin Durant, even if Kevin Durant comes back a shade of the type of player he was, that's still better than a majority of the league. I got to look at a list. I do agree that he is a top 5 player in the East. My issue with Kyrie, though, is I just feel like the injuries has been bothering him. And then he's always been plagued with injuries even since college. So this isn't something new. It's not it's not like something, it's this going in. I just think that KD and Kyrie are both such offensive juggernauts that if you pair them with the right players, and I also think that they both have chips on their shoulders to prove. So I think that's very interesting to see, because even though KD has the championships, there's still the naysayers and the doubters that are like, in my eyes, he doesn't have kind of same treatment LeBron was getting. It was like, oh yeah, he course he had to partner up with Chris Bosh to get those rings. I don't count those. Well, when he finally won in Cleveland and he beat that fantastic Warriors team, came back to 31. Even then, people were like, there's nothing else I could say. I feel like that's KD's chance here. Because what are they gonna say? Oh, he had to run a team up with Kyrie. I feel like if his only help on the Nets team is Kyrie, then he downgraded when he could have re-signed on that Warriors team. So I feel like this is his chance. And then Kyrie too. People, even though he has a championship, it's kind of like what Kobe had with Shaq, where it's like Shaq carried Kobe to those rings. Well, LeBron carried Kyrie, which I don't believe, because Kyrie was killer in that final playoff series.
41 game 5, game winner game 7. Oof.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really. I think that they just both have a lot to prove. I think that they're going to be great. Injuries is what I'm worried about. How do you think that they're going to be keeping Dinwiddie?
I see. Okay, here's the thing. If I have had to field so many, since I am a very outspoken Kyrie Irving fan, I've had to field so many arguments this year that Spencer Dinwiddie is better than Kyrie Irving as a player, and that is just blasphemous. Now, do I think Spencer Dinwiddie could be a really, really, really good 6-man type? Livingston, Iguodala, like morph on that team? Yeah, I really do. But do I think he wants to have that role? I don't know. Now, he did get paid So that helps ease the next 2 or 3 years because he knows his worth and he knows his value and he's not trying to get a big contract. But I'm not sure if he has the temperament to say, yeah, I'll be number 3 or number 4, depending on the day. I don't have to be the guy that's bringing the ball up and shooting and whatever. I can spot up. I can run the second offense or third offense. Then I think he'll be a great player on that team. But I'm not sure if that's what he wants to do.
I think he does too, because Dinwiddie's always been outspoken. He's even proclaimed too that, hey, Brooklyn doesn't need to get their third star because I'm here. I am their third star. And I think the thing about Spencer too is you got to give him a big shout out. A lot of people don't know he's actually a second round pick, 38th pick in the 2014 draft. And he worked his way up. And I think he does a lot of things that Kyrie can't do, if that makes any sense, because Dinwiddie's just a bigger guy. He's 6'6". He can defend more and he's sneakily athletic. A lot of people don't, because when you see Spencer Dinwiddie, you see all the highlights of him scoring, but he's phenomenal on the defensive end. I think Dinwiddie's one of those guys you have to kind of keep. The only issue is kind of now you're sitting there with that logjam of Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie, and Kyrie. But I think that they can make it work. I definitely see the Nets making a move though, and I definitely see them running with like a small ball lineup of possibly all 3 with KD in there.
Yep, I actually really like their lineup possibilities. If they don't, I still think the DeAndre Jordan ad was whatever, because I think they have. Like we talked about, Jared Allen, great center that can fit along with. Plus, they had other players that you probably could have shored up a little bit better. But I still think that the Kyrie Irving, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, KD, Jared Allen, or maybe not Karis LeVert, maybe Joe Harris, maybe Wilson Chandler if he stays, like guys like that who are, or even Garrett Temple. I forgot he was on that team. Those guys, like where you have one shooter, one guaranteed shooter that's not like a deliberate ball handler, playing alongside like a basically small ball lineup with KD at the 4. KD at the 4 is going to be deadly.
It's going to be disgusting, especially too, because if they end up keeping both Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan, then you just have 2 really solid bodies that you can just keep throwing out there with KD. I think KD at the 4 is going to be his natural transition, especially after this injury, because then that way too, he's defending a little bit slower guys. You know, it's like the difference between having to guard, let's just say, a Brandon Ingram compared to like Mirotic, that small forward to power forward transition. Yeah. So it's going to be a lighter load on him. And then KD's always been phenomenal in that position when we saw him play on the Warriors, especially because he's just so damn long. So he can defend. He's great at rebounding. There's just nothing that Durant can't do. I'm really excited. I think I wish him back, because I think the challenge between him and Giannis is going to be incredible. I think that's the only issue with Giannis so far is there's no second person to challenge him in the East, if that makes any sense. There's no player to his caliber that matches up well with him, because you can make the argument saying like, oh, Joel Embiid's really good. Yeah, but Giannis and Joel Embiid, I feel like Giannis just destroys him every time. Then you go down the list, okay, Jimmy, but Jimmy's really not going to be guarding Giannis like that. That's what I mean. So I think KD is
6'6".
Yeah, exactly. So if you go down the list of who else is really good in the East, I mean, that can match up with him and go toe-to-toe, the only real one I can really see is KD. Like, Siakam's good, but Siakam's not in the same stratosphere as Giannis, and he's a phenomenal player.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I also think that if we're looking at like them moving forward, I would definitely try to get like whenever LeBron switched down to play the 4, he had Shane Battier to guard 4s, like the bigger 4s. Mm-hmm. And I think if they could get a player like that to help spare KD the defensive responsibility a little bit more, that would also be something that just catapults them up more than you'd think that type of a player would do.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. They just got to put the right pieces around with them. I already think that they already got a solid roster. So I have to ask you, because we aren't seeing the playoffs, and we might not get to see a playoffs, knock on wood, I hope we do. What is your prediction? Who do you think would have won?
Oh, I was 100% Clippers.
You were 100% on the Clippers? Give me your reason.
I was 100% Clippers. So you have LeBron and AD, right? Mm-hmm. And you have Paul George and Kawhi. So let's say Kawhi is second, Paul George is fourth, and LeBron and AD are 1 and 3. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you list the next 4 players, they're all Clippers. If you list the next 4 best players, they're all Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, people do make the argument, which I do agree that the Clippers, they are a deeper team than the Lakers. I just think that I still think that the Lakers were going to come out of the West. I thought it was going to be a Lakers versus Bucks matchup.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that, but I don't know. I was not very confident in the Bucks. I think Bud is a good coach, but he's terrible at adjusting.
He's horrible in the playoffs.
I'm not so sure they would have been able to. I'm not so sure they would have been able to play with Boston and Toronto, if for some reason Boston and Toronto didn't have to play each other, if the Bucks had to play them both, I don't know if they could have got through both of them.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's like coaches like Mike Budenholzer. You can't ever say that he's not a great regular season coach because he is. He led that famous Atlanta Hawks team where they had the 4 All-Stars, Kyle Korver, Al Horford. He gets the best out of his players, but then you're right, he just never adjusts in the playoffs. Compared to a coach like, let's just say, Nick Nurse, who Nick Nurse isn't afraid to completely throw away the blueprint during halftime and adjust, which we've seen him do.
Right, run a box and one in the finals.
Yeah, exactly. Run a box and one. I think that we'll see though, because I just feel like Giannis is starting to get to that point where he's just so damn good that he just he just erases a lot of mistakes. Like kind of how like a young LeBron James, he just erases a lot of mistakes that his teammates do or bad coaching. It's just like the answer to the equation. You could just plug in Giannis and it just solves it. So we're going to see.
I think it would really come down to Bledsoe though. Like I agree with you that Giannis erases all that, but do you trust Eric Bledsoe to shoot in playoff series, or do you trust Pat Connaughton or Dante DiVincenzo or Brook Lopez to spot up and make threes when they crash on Giannis?
That's when they really do. They miss Malcolm Brogdon, but it just makes sense. Brogdon wanted to spread his wings. They didn't want to pay him. I feel like if they had a choice, though, they would have gone back because they gave Bledsoe that contract first before they gave it to Brogdon. But right. Brogdon would have fit perfectly. But I think that their guys like DiVincenzo have stepped up. He was atrocious last year. I mean, granted, it was his first year in the NBA, but this year he's been automatic. And then guys like George Hill, I feel like George Hill hasn't missed a single shot all season, especially when you watch him. I feel like every time I watch a Bucks game.
Yeah, that's actually funny.
Yeah, every time I watch a Bucks game, which is crazy because then the last real big memory of people have of George Hill was him. He couldn't buy a basket when he was playing in the championship on the Cavs. But I just think all those guys, I think all those guys make up for it, especially because, and then they don't necessarily need to hit the three, if that makes any sense, because last year what they weren't doing is I feel like they just stuck to their game plan so much. This year now you're seeing them do things like, okay, we do have a former all-star center. Let's just go to him in the post. And we've seen that before. Like they have closed out and won games like that where Giannis hasn't even touched the ball in the final minute. They just go to Brook Lopez and then he just pounds the ball in. But my thing about Bledsoe is I feel like he's always been a great defender. It's just sometimes when the playoffs happen, he's just all of a sudden just a black hole on offense.
Yeah, he got outplayed in a playoff series so badly that they started calling a dude who had never shot over 40% from the field in the regular season, Scary Terry.
Yeah.
That's like all I can say about Bledsoe in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I just think that the Bucks really rallied around Giannis and the incredible play. I also think that it's just crazy to see. I thought what he's doing this year is what I thought the young Sixers team like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, I thought they were just going to come out like monsters, especially after Kawhi ripped their hearts out. But instead it was Giannis. Giannis was the one who locked himself in a gym, came out, somehow improved on his MVP season from last year. And then now he's an honest three-point shooter. You can't, before people would just be daring him to shoot. Now sometimes you have to play him up close. And I think once he's able to get that down packed, it's just going to be crazy. But last question before we got to go, Romeo. So who, if you were going to build your franchise, who would you rather pick, Luka or Trae Young?
Dude, that question's like insulting a little bit. It's Luka and it's not close.
Uh-huh.
It's just, okay, here. Give me like 4 seconds so I can just bring this up real quick. So Trae Young, great player, right? I'm not going to argue that. Trae Young is a very good player. And he is bringing a Hawks team out of the depths of absolutely awful into regularly awful. But I'm just going to go through shooting splits real quick because I have them up. So Luka this year is shooting 73% in the restricted area. That is insane. Those are numbers that like are matched like by players who are bigs and LeBron. So I understand that Trae Young is he will be a revolutionary player as soon as they get him a little bit of help so he doesn't have to play on the ball 24/7. But man, Luka is already a top 12 NBA player. His passing is their passing is pretty similar. Luka is obviously a little bit taller, so he can throw a little bit different types of passes. And Trae Young passes a little bit different, like from different angles, because he's spacing the floor all the way to like 35 feet. But the thing that still will always separate them from me is Luka's worst stat right now is 3-point shooting at 32%, and free throw shooting at I think he's at 74. But that doesn't really matter when his overall efficient field goal percentage is still 54%, which is LeBron Miami level of efficiency in his second year.
Yeah, he's so damn good. They're both so damn good. I personally feel like, if I had to build it, I would pick Luka just for mostly his size too. Because the thing about Trae Young is an absolutely defensive liability. He is just dog shit on that end. And
he's the worst in the NBA.
Yeah, and then the thing
worst rated or whatever they use for that stat.
And then the thing is, you could make the argument because it's like Steph Curry. Steph Curry was never that great of a defender. People would seek him out on defense. They'd have to hide him. So you could make the Trae, and I don't think Trae Young's ever going to be a good defender just because of his size. But the thing about Trae Young too, and what some other analysts are saying is just Trae Young just doesn't even try on defense. Which you can make the argument, yeah, they're a bad team. They don't really have much to play for. Yeah, he's still young. Like, who cares? But until I really start seeing that, and he's still so young, it's the second season, so all this can change. Like once we really see what he can do, but. It just sucks because then, like, look how great Allen Iverson was. But Allen Iverson led the league in steals. I don't think that Trae Young's ever going to do something like that. So did
Steph Curry.
Yeah, so did Steph Curry. That's what I don't know. So we'll see. I think the thing about Trae Young, though, what's just like boggles my mind, is that he's so good. Like if his comparison is Steph Curry, and I say this all the time on this show, if this comparison is Steph Curry, I already think that he surpasses him at his age because Steph Curry's still a Davidson doing this. Like Trae Young's are doing this against professionals. See, Trevor Ariza here has to pick up a foul just so he doesn't get nutmegged. Like I think it's crazy just how good those two were. I think looking back at it, the Hawks might be thinking, you know what, maybe we should have kept that pick and picked Luka instead. But I know they're not disappointed because Trae Young's a phenomenal player. You just got to have the right pieces around him.
Here's the one thing I will say about Trae Young. Everybody compares him to Steph Curry, right? Because the deep threes and all that stuff. That people can holler at me for this one. I think Trae Young and Steph Curry have very, very small amount of similarities, almost zero. But Trae Young and Damian Lillard, many more similarities.
I see it too, especially because of just how deep the type of threes that he takes consistently.
The shot profiles line up. Even the passing, like Dame's probably not as good of a passer. Just like
I don't think he is.
He's trying.
Yeah, I don't think he's as good of a passer as Trae Young because Trae Young's crazy for how young he is, how well he could see the floor just in his second season. Same thing with Luka. I feel like Dame, even though Dame came in older because he finished out his entire college career. So he's coming in a little bit later, but even his rookie season compared to Trae Young's rookie season, like just even now, sometimes I don't think Dame's a better passer than Trae Young.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just think the shot profile similarities, the only real difference is Dame's obviously a little bit bigger and a little bit more athletic, like explosive wise, but they're taking similar types of step back. They're running the offense basically solely from above the break. They're not taking they're not taking bad mid-rangers. They're not taking corner threes very often because they're the focal point. So I think the difference between Trae Young and Steph Curry is much bigger than the difference between Trae Young and Damian Lillard.
Yeah, I can see that. I just feel like it's just easier to make the comparison with Steph Curry and Trae Young, especially too because they were both. It's kind of like how Jimmer was because Damian Lillard really wasn't. He didn't really start adding that into his repertoire, the arsenal of like logo Lillard until like the past 2-3-ish years compared to Trae Young, who was already doing it at a very young age. Same thing with Curry. Curry was just automatic, but we didn't really start seeing him take those half court shots until 3-4 years ago. So
yeah, probably about 14, 15.
Yeah, 14, 15. Yeah. So, but I can definitely see that. I like that too. I think that's something that people are gonna have to be thinking about. But I think it's just easier to make the comparison with Trae Young and Steph Curry because it's just like Steph Curry is just the guy. He's like if you were gonna compare him to someone,
he's the person they'd be compared to as a de facto small guard.
Yeah, the de facto small guard. Yeah, but other than that, is there anything that you want to give a shout out to or anything, Romeo?
I will say, living in Dallas, while you joke about the VIP thing, I did run into Dirk at an airport once.
Oh, wow. I bet Dirk was honored to have a chance to talk to you and shake your hand. But thank you, Romeo, for coming on the show, and hope you have a good one, man. Stay safe. Get some hand sanitizer.
I appreciate it, man.
Of course. Take care.
Oh, for sure. Stay safe out there.